Welcome back, Addicts. I'm Josh, and today we're talking about The Walking Dead, but we're not talking about the comic. We're talking about Season 9, Episode 1, A New Beginning, which, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I really enjoyed this episode, so we're going to get right into it. This is a warning. I am going to cover or talk about all of what happened in the episode. Well, maybe not everything in detail, but I will probably talk about some big things that happened in the episode. So if you don't want to be spoiled, go watch it and then come back or, do your thing. But I just want to give that warning there. But jumping right into it, this is a little bit deviated from the comic. Obviously, they like to remix stuff on the show. But from kind of like the vibe that we see at the beginning and throughout the episode, I'm led to believe that this is about maybe around a 1.5 to 2 year skip. It's probably maybe a little bit less than that. I doubt it's anything larger than that. In the comic, it was more about maybe 3-4 years. This is definitely a lot shorter because you can still tell a lot of the tensions that were at the end of the last season are definitely still there, and they're still semi-fresh wounds. And so that just gives kind of a little bit of insight on that. But in terms of the episode, we get to see a look at all of the communities, just seeing how far they've progressed, where characters are at in this timeline. We get to see all of the leaders, or at least ones that we've known throughout, especially the last season. We got Rick, Ezekiel, the Oceanside lady, Jadis, which they're now calling something else. They gave her a different name, which I found a little weird. And then we also get, basically everybody else. Maggie and everybody else is there. And they're actually going on a run to DC to get up some supplies. They went to a museum to get some older type equipment to help them use as kind of like a base scheme for making kind of like wagons and plows and stuff like that. But then they also get to some supplies in terms of food, where they get seeds and stuff like that. And we get to see, for the bulk of the episode, I would say we get kind of a look at what trouble is brewing in terms of inner community struggle at the Hilltop and at the Sanctuary, primarily with the Sanctuary dealing with leadership roles. And I guess the Hilltop kind of dealing with leadership roles as well, but more so in terms of, Gregory and Maggie, and on Sanctuary, kind of like who's going to be keeping an eye on these people. So that's basically all I'll say in terms of, breaking down or as an overview of what happened. There was just a lot of little things that I was wanting to talk about that I really did enjoy. For me, I thought this was a really solid episode. I got a lot of older season vibes, especially with like season 1 and like the back half of season 5, because we get to see parts of the city where we haven't seen that in a while. So it was really cool going back to those kind of roots, and it just has kind of that older DNA to it that I really did like. Seeing how they kind of remix things in terms of not only with certain characters, but kind of like their looks, and then also just where they're at and how they're connecting in this world. I'll just go down my list of notes because that's probably the easiest way to keep on track here. At the beginning of the episode, we get to see a nice little moment between Rick and Michonne as they're sitting with Judith, which Judith is actually she's been growing, but we actually see her get to act her own age, I guess you could say. And so that's really cool to see. She's still, I guess, supposed to be around 3 or 4 years old, maybe. It seems like it's supposed to be a little bit younger than that, but still, we're moving forward finally. They're finally accepting that this is a human being that's growing. Along with that, there was a little neat nod as they were going through the different communities, kind of, watching or giving you an idea of what has changed. They have this one savior using a cane that I'm assuming they're having to use because of injuries that they sustained during the war. And I just thought that was a nice little Easter egg, because obviously Rick doesn't have the cane like he does in the comics after the war, and so I thought that was a neat little way to put that in there. We get to see characters that are actually at the sanctuary with Eugene and Rosita, and at first I thought they were staying there, but I guess they're just kind of a group that's going from place to place to kind of help out where they can. Another thing I thought was kind of funny was, they're trying to give people new looks and everything to, not only have these characters have a little bit of, visual age or time passing, but also just, as like a refreshment to them. And I just found it funny because you get to see Aaron and Jesus out on the road clearing some walkers, and Aaron has a bigger beard than Jesus now, which I don't know why. I just thought that a little bit funny. Like I said, we got some cool city shots. There's a lot of cool walkers in this. I won't say a lot, but there's definitely a handful of really cool walkers they had. There's some with their jaws just looking really gnarly. And then there's one that they do with spiders and spider webs. I won't go into detail about that, but it's a really cool shot to see. At first, it's not really important. I was going to say they kind of give you this, hint, or maybe not hint, but like another Easter egg to the comic where Dwight is supposed to have Lucille in the new beginning. And on this, we see Rick, when he's riding his horse through the city, he hits something, a walker with a bat, and it looks like Lucille from first glance, but they have another shot where it's closer in, and it looks like almost like a mace that's made out of metal, but it's just in the shape of a baseball bat. So I thought that was another neat little nod. But like I said, we get to a look at some other characters. Jadis is finally looking normal and not like a piece of trash. Yes, that's a really terrible joke. We get to see Gabriel, which I really like his look. His look's really cool. Daryl is another one that his character, not only his look, but his character's been completely, I guess, not redone, just refreshed in the sense that he's got this older season vibe to him. I don't know, he just seems like he's a bit of the older Daryl, and I really like that because for one example, he's actually talking lines. He actually has moments where he's speaking. He's not just pissed off or just grunting, and I really do like that because it was kind of annoying just having a walking like a Sasquatch, just walking through the woods, not really saying anything, and now he's actually having some sort of depth and development, and we actually get to see just a little bit of what he's thinking. Which ironically with Daryl, he is now, or he has been, the leader at the sanctuary for a little bit, however long this time span is, and we get to see how he's wanting to shift away from that because he feels uncomfortable being there, which I think is an excellent way on giving a good, reasonable excuse for that. Because in the comic, Dwight was taking over the sanctuary, and his made sense too, but I feel like Daryl's is a little bit more understandable, because it's not his people. He was a prisoner there, and he just doesn't want to be there, and it makes sense. And especially we get to see throughout the episode tensions between Daryl and Rick and Maggie, and it's something that it feels real because of what you've seen them go to and how their ideals clashed at the end of the last season. Although with the time skip, that's another reason why I say it's a little bit shorter, is because these still feel like really fresh wounds. But I don't want to keep going on too much, so I'll just skim through these a couple. There was another really nice moment. We get to see, like I said, with the characters taking different storylines, we get to see Carol taking a little bit of Michonne's comic story with her being with Ezekiel, and there's a really good interaction between them when they're on the road, and I really like this small little moment. I really hope they're not setting him up to die, because I really like Ezekiel on the show. In the comic, I thought he was cool, but I wasn't too connected with him, but I'm a lot more invested in his character in the TV show, especially with how we've seen him so far in this new season. I guess really the only one complaint I had throughout the whole episode was when they're coming back from their run through the city, there's a part where the wagon gets stuck and they get past the wagon, they move everything, but I guess they took some things off the wagon to make it lighter so it was easier to get it unstuck, and so they're having to load the wagon back up, and as they're doing, there's walkers coming out of the forest, and they have a group about, I want to say maybe at least 8 people with them. And, you know, the things that they're moving, it only takes like 2 people to move. And there ends up being a character that ends up dying because they choose not to interact with the walkers at all. They just try to avoid them. And so they're moving things onto the cart. And when I guess the walkers get close enough, they're like, nope, we're out. And then the guy comes back because he's trying to free the horse and he gets bit. And I find it a little bit of a nitpick because in a situation like this, I would feel like it's really easy to kill walkers, especially on the show. They show how easy it is to kill them. And they even, like, after he gets bit, there's like a group of like 3 or 4 of them that go out and they kill all the walkers that are there. So it was just a little nitpick. I mean, I get why they had it because they need this catalyst for the thing that happened at the hilltop, which, by the way, I did really like how they remixed that. So it's one of those things where it was like, I think they could have done that in a more believable way, but I like how they did it because it makes a lot of sense the way they remixed this, and I actually really do like it. I was really curious to see how they were going to do this, if they were going to do it at all without Carl, and they actually did it really well. With that, it's mainly just you get to see more of Gregory and his scheming. And I was kind of wondering, it felt like it was going at a really fast pace, and I was like, man, are we going to get to see the end result of this by the end of the episode? Or are they going to drag this out? Because in the comic, there's not many, I guess you could say, I don't want to say arcs, but there's not many things that go on before we get to the next big event in the comic. And so I was really surprised that they decided to get this done and over with at the beginning of the very first episode. But I did really like it. I thought the pacing was excellent. There was stuff going on, even though there wasn't, I guess you could say, a lot of action. It was still a really good episode, and it just goes to show the surviving factor of the show. And yeah, there's just not much more than I could say. There's obviously a lot of in-between stuff that I may have not highlighted. There's actually one that I think is the funniest thing that I'm actually shocked is not in the comic anywhere between Rick and Andrea, but we get a moment of Rick and Michonne, and she makes a comment of being with the famous Rick Grimes, and I just love that because in the show they do it a little bit, and I'm sure we'll see more of it in the next couple episodes. But in the comic, it's like people are praising Rick; they think he's some sort of hero, which he is. But I mean, they kind of maybe push it a little too far, and so I just find that they reference that really well. But yeah, there's like I said, I don't want to ramble on too much, because I wanted to keep this semi-short. On the next episode, it looks like we're going to be focusing on the sanctuary and dealing with the, I guess, aftermath of Maggie putting her foot down on not wanting to give out a free hand to the sanctuary anymore. So they're going to start rebuilding paths that are shorter travel ways to the sanctuary. And then we're also going to get a bit of Negan, which for the next episode and like going forward into like the first half of the season, I really do hope that they add more original content. It seems like with the bridge and everything, that's going to be a part of that because we didn't have that in the comic. But we do have, I would say, probably that's going to lean into the comic storyline of seeing the sanctuary kind of rising up, or maybe not so much rising up, but just getting a little bit more distant to Alexandria and the other communities, and just kind of, I guess you could say, putting kindling on the fire. And then I would say that the other half of that would be just seeing more talks with Negan, seeing his interactions. In terms of what we can pull from the comic, I believe that, they can remix this in a lot of ways because they don't necessarily happen in this order in the comic. But, I feel like we might be able to see Negan get out of his cell sometime before the first half ends. I don't really think that's as big of a possibility, but it's still probable because I'm not really sure what they could add in between this. But another big thing is I believe they showed the scene of introducing the new big bads in the trailer, and if I remember right, their trailers that they reveal only show clips from the first half of the season. So if the very last episode of the first half of the season is going to introduce the Whisperers, then we might get an introduction to Magna and her group before the first half ends. Although I'll be honest, I just feel like it's not. They can change it however they want, but Magna's group is something that I feel like, especially for the show, that they'll elevate to be a big thing. And so I feel like that's more of something that I would, maybe not should do, but just that they would do as a premiere for the second half of the season. But like I said, they can remix it either or, because in the comic, Magna's group was already there at Alexandria before the Whisperers came in, and they could just do the opposite of that. They could have the Whisperers come in and then Magnus group gets there. I don't keep up with the news of like casting or anything like that, so I don't have any insight to pull from there. But that's just kind of the thoughts I have going forward. But yeah, I guess that's it for this video. This was kind of just on a whim, because I did a poll on the last comic review I did, and I got some replies, but not a whole lot. So this was kind of a thing where I was like, well, I already started doing prep work for it, and I was like, oh, what the hell? I'll just go ahead and do it. So we'll just kind of see how it goes. I was somebody, I started with the show and I really liked the show, and then I got into the comic, and now, especially with the last season of the show, I really have started to lean more towards the comic than the show. But this season has started off really good. I highly recommend that you guys check it out if you're a Walking Dead fan, and if you stopped watching the show, I think this is a good time to come back. They're starting fresh. It's kind of like a reboot, like a soft reboot for the series. So I think this is something that you should, check out if you still have, an interest in the world of The Walking Dead. But going forward, I'll try to have each episode out. Depending on, how well everything does and how busy I am, we might group the episodes together. I'm not really sure yet, but stay tuned because I will still have my comic reviews up for The Walking Dead, and if something happens to where I'm not able to do the episode 1, I'll at least let you guys know, or I'll at least do an overview review of the season. But stay tuned for that. We're going to plan on episode by episode, so I will hopefully see you guys next week. And if you want to check out other stuff, be sure to look at our library. We got a lot of comic stuff. We got a lot of show and movie stuff. And our game content is just growing more and more with our playthroughs starting. So if any of that sounds good to you, go check it out. If you want to follow us on social media or watch our podcast, links are in the description. But anyway, guys, I'm done talking. So I'll see you guys next week. Later.